Good afternoon. I'm Laura Zervis, and I'm so happy to be here today. And we're going to make some soups. But let's first talk about the season. And let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name's Laura Zervis. I'm a registered dietitian and licensed nutritionist. I see patients in private practice. I also do classes and speak at events and just love spreading the word about nutrition and how to include healthy eating patterns into our everyday life. And it doesn't have to be complicated, and it doesn't have to be, sometimes people are like, oh, I've got to get all these recipes and get things in order. And I always tell everybody, in case this is your first time joining me, that I like to just try maybe one recipe a week. See if your family likes it, see if you like it, see if it's something that's feasible. Are the ingredients easy to get? Is it easy enough for you to prepare? Does it require a special trip to a specialty store to get those ingredients? Does it require equipment that you may have but you don't use all the time? Is it something you're not quite comfortable preparing? So let's look at all of those things. And what I like about today's recipes, we're doing 4 soups today. I always try to give you, try to squeeze 4 recipes in there and give you all the recipes are on the website, but just show you some different things. I like to point out the nutritional value of everything that I'm using. I like to introduce you to new cooking methods. I like to introduce you to cooking methods that like today, we're going to make some soups and we're going to make some of them creamy. And how do we do that? Well, sometimes you could add, sometimes it's the ingredients that we add, correct? Like a heavy cream or something like that. But to keep it lower in saturated fat and to keep it healthy so it can be part of that everyday eating pattern. We're going to use some other methods of thickening soups, whether we're going to puree them, whether we'll use an immersion blender, maybe we use some potatoes or other starchy products like that, some good carbohydrates. We're going to do, I'm going to introduce you to several of those things today. And we're also going to, with the high cost of food and ingredients, I want to introduce some proteins to you that are lower cost, that are shelf stable, that you could always have around on hand. And I'm talking about bags of beans, cans of beans, and things like that. And we're going to discuss the nutritional value of those and discuss how, you may have heard that, oh, well, canned beans are high in sodium or they can't be a part of your healthy diet. But we're going to take a second look at those things. So let's get started because some things have to cook for a long time. So we're going to get those ones cooking right away. So the first one is going to be the one that I had mentioned to you, a creamy mushroom soup. And we all love a cream of mushroom soup, right? Sometimes they get a really bad reputation because we think that they're high in fat or sodium. So let's look at a healthy version of that today. So I'm going to get that started we've got a lot of, got all the stock pots out today, different sizes and shapes, just to keep it fun. Using a lot of our burner steak. A lot of these are going to start out with the same ingredients. We're going to have celery, onions, garlic in most of them, celery, carrots, and onions in most of them, garlic, shallots, olive oil, all going to be similar. We have some greens, we have some beans, and some different flavors going on, and having fall in mind too. So a lot of these things are available now and at your disposal. Really fun to incorporate these things. And who doesn't like a warm bowl of soup, right? These are nice things that we could take to work or that we could have at home. A lot of them can stand on their own. Our one soup that we're making today, the beans and greens with turkey sausage, it has an excellent nutrition profile, equally balanced in carbohydrates and protein, making it a complete meal. The other things, maybe you just need to add a protein to it, or if you want to keep it the way it is, that's fine too. Whatever it is that needs to fit into your own nutritional pattern, but they're all going to be very satisfying. So, and I like them. Since I'm making 4 soups today, I'm going to be freezing a lot of them and pulling them out for my own lunch. Or some weeknight dinner where I'm in a pinch for something. So let's get started. Don't want to hold us back. That first one, like I said, is the mushrooms. And I'm going to start it now because it's going to use potatoes in it. And that's how it's going to get its thickness. We're going to we're going to, after the potatoes are fully cooked, we're going to use an immersion blender and pulse it and make it thick then. And but they have to be tender first. So we're gonna have to get started. So I'm just going to add some olive oil to our stock pot. We're gonna do some of our recipes might involve 2 steps. This one, most jogging pot, which is nice. So I'm just going to add my shallots. We know give everything a wonderful taste of every notch. And we're also going to add our celery. We're just going to let that saute. Just stir that in there. Excuse me. So what I did before class too, with a lot of this is the mushroom one. So I'm going to start, while these are sauteed, I'm going to cut up the mushrooms. But I wanted to talk to you about the beans that we're using today in class. I soaked them all last night, so they would soften. And I do that under refrigeration. That prevents extra fermentation, and that's the safer way to go. And then in the morning, simply rinse them. I just rinse them right before class. And they are, if you were to eat one now, the black beans, and I also have lima beans today. If you were to eat one now, it's not, obviously not like it's hard out of the bag. It's firm to the bite, but not all the way cooked. So it probably does, I want to say about 50% or more. Probably 50 to 75% of the tenderness is already achieved. We're going to cook it the rest of the way. But let's first start. I'm going to adjust my camera so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to be cutting up. I have some shiitake mushrooms, and I also have some baby bella mushrooms. If you like other mushrooms, you could certainly use them. If you just have white mushrooms on hand, that'll be wonderful too. These are all, they'll all work. So let's just get our knives out here. And we're just going to, I don't know if I'm going to use all of these. So this is a real nice recipe, and it's going to be very fragrant too. And if you go ahead and look at the website, you can see the full recipe. I'm also going to use some dry sherry in it. And if you're concerned about that, you can use a cooking sherry, but we do know that most of that alcohol does burn off. And we're left with just the flavor. Again, just a rough chop of these. It doesn't have to be perfect or uniform like I always say in every other class, right? When we're roasting these or we're doing something, we always want them to be uniform, but this is just a real rough chop. They're like this, just so they cook down real nicely, that you don't want them too small. Okay, and some of them we're going to be saving for the end. With them. And I could hear our celery and shallots real cooking real nicely. So here's our shiitake. Again. And I've washed them, but if you see any spots, just obviously cut them off, discard them. And you'll notice whenever, if you are using the shiitake mushrooms, they're a little tougher. You know, in the like a baby bella or a white mushroom, you could just go it like that. Shiitake a little bit of give to it. You just couldn't pull it apart. It's a little difficult to pull the stem off. Pulling. You really have to, if you want to discard the stem, you're really going to have to cut it. Whereas we know the other mushroom that just pull right out of there. Again, I don't like to, I did rinse them gently. I don't like to soak or immerse them because the water gets stuck in there. And it's hard to remove, and then they're soaked and it dilutes your final product. So unless, even if you have a sufficient amount of time to dry them, it still, it waterlogs them and it could interfere. So I just like to rinse them lightly, try to remove up as much dirt as I can while I'm rinsing them, but you could see it doesn't all come off, so I just cut that tail off. Okay, I think that's where I'm going to stop. This smells delicious already. Cutting board, and I'll bring this over to you in 1 minute. Let's get it all stirred together. And we're going to be adding stock to this, but you still want everything to get coated with the oil. We're just going to give this a stir. I'm going to show you what it looks like. Holders here. So this is what it looks like. It's just sizzling real nicely. Going to give this a stir. And then we're also going to add our garlic, and this is about 3 cloves. Oh my goodness, this smells wonderful. Okay, we're just gonna let this go another, just get that last little bit of oil in there. It's gonna let this go a few more minutes, because what we're gonna do is, before we add our stock, and cook the potatoes really well, we're going to remove some of that onion the onion shallot, or the shallot mushroom mixture rather. And we're going to set that aside after the potatoes are in there with the stock cooking very nicely. And we pulse it to make it thick. We're just going to add a few mushrooms, that little mushroom mixture right on top. So we just want to cook them a little bit now, just to get them a little bit tender and fragrant with the shallots and the celery and the garlic. So I'm just going to keep giving them another stir. It's always nice too, whenever you are making a dish, to if you're going to garnish it, give a little nod to what the dish actually is. So that'll be our garnish, just a couple of mushrooms on top. And then you could always too, I think it would be really nice too, as far as fresh herbs go, I would probably put on maybe a little bit of thyme, maybe a little bit of sage, fresh sage, tarragon, piece or two of tarragon, anything like that's going to go really nicely. Or like I think fresh thyme would probably be the best. So just a few sprigs on top would be nice. That's probably what I would use. I think that would bring out, but hey, feel free to experiment on your end. If there's a fresh herb that you really like to use that sparks joy with you, that brings out more umami taste from the mushrooms. Remember, mushrooms give us that smoky, kind of that sixth sense that we have, or taste rather that we have. We have sweet, sour, and salty, and bitter, but there's also, I should say, the fifth one. I'm not thinking senses there. The fifth taste that we have, that umami. And that's where we get this out of. It's almost like that taste that we get from some meats, but mushrooms have that as well, and that's what makes them special. So I'm going to just reserve some of these. Let me show you how this, oh my goodness, this smells amazing. I could probably just eat this the way it is. But we're going to scoop some out, and then I'll show you what we're going to do. Okay. We're just gonna set that aside, and then we are going to add our chicken stock and potatoes. And I'm just using, 4 cups of a lower sodium chicken stock. If you have it homemade, that's great. If there's something you like to use, this could also be done with vegetable stock. I also have a nice vegetable base too that I like to use sometime. All right, so then we're going to add our potatoes, and I cut our Yukon Gold potatoes earlier, and I have them soaking in some cold water. So I'm just going to drain. And then I'm going to add them as well. So I have about a pound in there, and I just put them in cubes, and we're going to return this, and we're going to keep it over a higher heat. And let me just give it another stir. And this is going to be really nice. So on to our next soup, and I have our sherry that we're going to use later. We'll just add it in a little bit at the end, probably when we have, maybe that last 10-15 minutes to go. Set this aside. Okay, let that cook. Let me move the rest of our mushrooms over here. Okay, all right. And let me think what else we want to do here. Okay. I knew we had something else. So in addition to the 4 cups of broth, we also wanted to add 2 cups of water. So I'm just going to let that come to a boil, let it simmer. It's probably going to be about 30 minutes. So we'll definitely have a chance to look at that before class is over. So let's move on to our next one, which I think we should do our spicy black bean soup. So let me adjust the camera and talk to you. Well, let's talk about beans first. So I get this question all the time. Are canned beans bad for me, or is it okay to use those? So we do know that, just to point out food labels, we have our percent daily value. And if there's anything that you remember about food labels, it's that the 525 rule. So if something is 5 or less, it's low. If it's 25 or more, it's what we call a good source. So it depends what you're looking for. So today we're thinking about sodium. So I'm going to look at that sodium, and it tells me that it's 105 milligrams, which is 5% of the daily value. So not incredibly high, right? And if I look at other numbers that I do want to be high, I'm going to look at fiber, and it's telling me 18%. So that is a better source. Is it a good source? I mean, I still think so. It's not above 25, but it's still an excellent source of fiber. And we also have in here, let's see, there's nothing above 25, but we do know that it is lower, only 5% of the daily value for sodium. So it is acceptable. Now, the other one I get is, what is better? The better to use the dried beans or a can of beans? Well, obviously, these have an expiration, but it's not even till next year. I just bought these the other day. But this will probably last in your shelf on your shelf for a very long time. And I like to use them, excuse me, probably the disadvantage would be is you could definitely portion out how much you wanted these, and you could with these too. But I typically, when I use them, I am making soup. I do soak them overnight and then, do my soup the next day. This one, I could make soup right away just using these. So these are usually cost effective compared to these. Now you can't compare these two because these ones are organic, and my black beans that I am using today are not organic. I didn't see black beans that were organic in my grocery store. The lima beans that I'm using today, they were organic. So it's kind of hard to compare the price. The dried beans are typically going to be a better price point for you though. So nice to know that. And there are, as far as ingredients, this does have salt. So let me tell you about the salt in this. Zero, because they did add salt to this. And if we see here, now this is the funny thing too. This is saying for 1/4 cup And they're saying, so I would have to find out, and I'm sorry to not find out before class. This is talking about a half cup serving, a half cup serving. This is a quarter cup serving. And I think they're referring to the actual dry bean, which is going to yield more. And they're saying that this is 25 grams, that it's also 7 grams of fiber, which is 25%, making it a high fiber food. So really kind of, it's the same. We're just talking about two different portion sizes. So you really have to look at that. These are not any less, but I think for the serving size, this might be a good way to, sorry, keep putting this upside down. The black beans, when you look at it like this, but I recipe what they are talking 1/4 cup prepared or 1/4 cup dry. Anyhow, let's set those aside and let's get on with our soup. These are my beans that I soaked overnight. And like I was telling you, I discarded any ones that didn't look good. And if you try to bite one, and I'll just break one and see if I could break. Yeah, see, they do break in half. So it does get them tender, it does get that started. So let's get started. So we're going to start the same way we did with our other soup. So I'm going to move my other soup to the back. Okay, and we're going to add our olive oil and let's see here. I don't see it on this one. Okay. And here is our prep. Let me set the beans aside and I'll show you the rest of the prep to this. And we have done black bean soups before. This is a different recipe that I wanted to share with you. Let me get something else here. This is a different recipe. And what I like about this is it's a little bit, this one is spicier. So, okay. So what we're going to do is first we're going to saute our, let's see where I have it here. I've got onions and garlic and celery. So let's do that first. Onions, celery, and our carrots. I have a lot today. I have like, 1.5 cups carrots, half cup of onions, and a good cup of celery, because I like it a little bit chunky too, and I like to have a lot of vegetables. So this way I know I'm getting a lot in there. So I'm just going to give that a stir. Down a little bit. Right. I'm just going to add a little bit more oil. All right, now that that is going, we're just going to let that cook a little bit. And then after that, we're going to add our garlic. And then we're going to add our stock. We have chicken stock with this one as well. And then we're also going to add some other vegetables. For this one, we're going to add escarole. So I didn't chop it too much. So let's get that chopped right now while we're waiting for our things to cook down. So escarole, if you haven't used it, I encourage you to try it. It makes a great addition to soups because it does hold its shape. It's not just going to turn to mush. It's not as hard as kale, but it will get nice and soft, but you'll still be able to see the leaves. Let me get my French knife here. Just taking a little bit longer. Okay. There we go. So I had already watched this and had it ready here for the most part, but we just wanted to finish that up. All right, and now that we have this going, I'm going to add the garlic. Okay, and I'm also going to add our spices. I have some cumin here. Just give that a good dusting. Salt. And I have a little paprika, probably about a teaspoon. I'm just going to use unsmoked. Add that in here. Okay, so we're gonna let that go, and I'm going to add my stock to it. And we're just gonna add 4 cups of this one too. Okay, and then we're also going to add about 2 cups of crushed tomatoes. All right, and we're gonna add 1 jalapeno that was diced. All right, and then we're just going to put this in here. And I also have 1 bay leaf too. I was looking for my bay leaf. Get that in there. We'll give it a stir. I'm also going to give my mushroom soup a stir because it is just moving right along. Then I'm going to put the lid on our mushroom soup. I do want it to reduce a little, but I don't want to, I just want to cook those potatoes. So I'm just going to turn that one down a little bit. Okay, so that's got a nice little simmer to it. And then I have our bean soup and we're going to add our escargot to that. So let's just do that now. And I think what I'll do is put this with the rest of our escargot and then we will add it. I'll bring the pot over here so you can see it. Okay. Up here, and then we'll bring that pot over. Okay, so you can see how our soup is going so far, and we're going to add, oops, escargot. Don't worry about that. That is going to cook down, and we're also going to add our beans. Just, I'm going to say one thing about my add a little bit more water to that. All right. And we're just going to let that cook down real nicely. And that should be ready before class is over too. Okay, so that's great. So let's move on to our next one. Is our beans and greens with turkey sausage. So what I've done with that one is we're going to use turkey sausage because I just like that it has less, let's think about it. Let's go back a step. So turkey sausage, how it's different from a pork sausage is it's going to have probably the same amount of sodium. Today's one that I chose though, has no nitrates or no nitrites, which we know are carcinogenic. So you always want to avoid those. You don't want to have them as a regular part of your pattern. But in addition to that, since we're using turkey, it's going to have lower saturated fat. So it's still going to have the sodium if you're worried about sodium. Sometimes people think, oh, well, I should have less sodium. That no, you're really just losing the saturated fat part of it. And you also want to remember to go no nitrates and no nitrites. So let's get that chopped up. And I just bought some that was in the casing, and we're just going to cut that up into chunks, and we're going to saute that. That's going to be the first part of our soup. Okay, so let me just adjust this so you can see it. And I like to cut them the same size. Okay, 2, 3, 4, 5, whoops, missed on this one, 6, and then 7, 8, 6, 7, 8, and then so that way, if we know that we've got 8 slices out of each one, that they're about the same. So let me get our other pan here. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of olive oil. And we're going to add our sausage to that, a little bit more. And let me move our other soup over since we're getting a little crowded here. Find my pot holders. This started back here. Over here. All right. Going to kick this up a little and put this here. Give our other one a stir in the back. And this mushroom looks amazing. Really, and it smells delicious too. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and add our sherry to that as well, because we've got a nice oil going on there, nice little simmer. I'm going to cover that. Okay, our sausage is cooking. And then while that's cooking, let me show you the rest of our ingredients for this one. Get everything moved over. Now this one, we are going to use the cannellini beans. And today I did buy the organic one of these. So let me tell you about these. And this is telling us 1/2 cup. And we're going to compare this to our black beans too. 1/2 a cup is 110 calories, obviously no fat, 135 milligrams of sodium, which is 6% of the daily values of sodium. Carbohydrates, 19, dietary fiber 5. So a net carb of 14, and obviously no sugar, 7 grams of protein. And 3 grams of iron, which is 15% of our daily value. So that's really good. And let's just compare them. A 1/2 cup of black beans to a 1/2 cup of the white kidney beans or the cannellini. Give this a stir. Okay, so both no fat, 135 sodium versus 105, and that's obviously in the processing. One has 19 carbs, one has 20. They both have 5 grams of fiber, and they both have 7 grams of protein. And when it comes to vitamin D, 9, iron, a little less iron in our black beans, 1.6 versus 3, and potassium, a little bit more in our white kidney. 100 milligrams of calcium in our cannellini versus 50 in the black beans. So that's good to know. With your calcium there, that's giving you 8%. And remember, we need anywhere from, depending on your age group, 1,000 to about 1,200 milligrams of calcium per day. Almond milk is going to have 450, cow's milk 350, cheeses around 100, but you could see here 100 for a 1/2 cup of our white kidney beans, making that a decent source of calcium. So it's good to know. It's Not any one thing sometimes is going to fill the whole bill. You know, obviously, unless you're taking a supplement, but as far as food goes, it takes a lot of different food. It takes a varied diet to get everything in. So it's just good to know for planning purposes that this is giving you some calcium. So let's give our sausage a stir here. And it's getting nice and brown, just like we wanted. And we'll let that go another minute, and we're going to add our vegetables to that. So let me show you. So cannellini beans rinsed and drained. And then with this one, I move my prep over so you can see it. We're going to be using, we have celery, oops, sorry, we have celery, some tomatoes, and I have on the recipe maybe about 3 to 4 Roma tomatoes. These are just some tomatoes from my garden that I like to use frozen because I'm not even going to chop them up. They'll just get real nice in the soup. Some carrots and some garlic. And then we're also going to finish off with some lemon juice at the end and some kale. And we're also going to use some chicken stock. Again, you could use vegetable stock too. So just going to add a little bit more of our oil, and we're going to start to saute our vegetables. We're going to add onion. And we've got onions here and sitting here. They got a lot of liquid. Drain that off. So it sautés real nicely. So we have onions. And we have our celery. We want to take sure with a little bit of water in those too. And we have our carrots. And we're going to let that go. And we're just going to get that till it's nice and tender. Give that a stir. And I'm going to show you what this looks like now. Okay, let me bring that over and show that to you so you can see what that looks like. So we have our brown sausage, and then we have the onions, carrots, and celery. And we're just going to cook this. And then once this is mostly cooked, we'll add our garlic to it. And next, we're also going to chop some greens. So let me just turn this down a little bit. Okay, and then for this recipe, so one recipe, we have the escarole, and this one, we have the kale. And look how beautiful that, look how dark green this is. So the answer, if you're playing a trivia game, you know, what are the vitamins in this? Of course, when we ask about vitamin, when we ask about folic acid, when we ask about vitamin C, when we ask about vitamin D, when we ask about vitamin A, the dark green leafy vegetables, and kale is just a prime example of a dark green leafy vegetables. Has a really great smell to it. Just rinse this off real lightly. There is a rib in this. So when I'm making kale salad, sometimes I like to take this out. You don't have to. It will get nice in our soup. It'll get nice and tender. It's up to you. You could take that out or not. It can stay in there. If you see this real hard one, if it's a bigger one like that, it might be better. So we could just take them all out. We're not going to be cooking this a very long time in class, so we'll just discard that one. But it's nice to, you know, in these soups, these two soups that we made, one that had escarole, one that had kale, you could use, you could do either or. We could have done the kale in that one and the escarole in this one. It doesn't, any kind of, they'll both work. These are both great greens for soups. You know, and that's, they'll retain their body a little bit more. I mean, certainly spinach is okay. It's going to wilt very fast, and it's not going to lend to the texture. So this is just something I like to use. And it's nice to mix it up. We don't always have the opportunity to use kale, but it is one of those. And the other thing, if you are averse to the fragrance of kale, some people, I have a lot of clients that don't like the way this tastes in their smoothie or their salad, or as soon as I bring up, when we go for that that initial interview and we talk about vegetables and I say kale, a lot of people immediately make a face. And I don't know if it's because of some of the compounds that are in here that make it, give it certainly a fragrant taste or a fragrant smell. But when you cook it down in a soup, it'll really get a lot more mild. So it might be a good place for you to use it. So we're just gonna, nothing fancy here, just a rough chop. It is going to cook down. And again, about, it was one bunch, which is about 6 ounces. And that was just a small head of escarole too. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to add our garlic. Give this all a stir. All right, and then we're going to add our stock. And this one is just, we're not going to use water. We're going to use about 6 cups of our chicken stock. Again, it could also be vegetable. And this looks beautiful. This is, like I said, this one is really balanced in carbs and protein. The nutrition profile on this is beautiful. 300 calories per serving, about 15 grams of fat, 2 grams of fat, 22 carbs, 6 fiber, giving it a net carb of 18 and 18 protein. So very nice and balanced in both. So I'm going to add my beans. And let me set this aside. I'm also going to add my chopped kale. And we're also going to add our tomatoes. All right, let me just set that aside and get my hands wiped. And we could move on to our next soup, which I still think we're doing okay for time. Give this a little stir. And this just is screaming to me, you know, yummy, delicious, and healthy. When I see all that beautiful kale and the beans, and it does remind me of, you know, greens and beans. So we're going to get that going. And I'm also going to cover this one, just to, so we don't want to lose away. We're not trying to condense this one necessarily. That's the wrong lid for that one. Oh, let me see what I've got here. We use this bigger one until I don't want to. Okay, that'll work. So we've got our 3 soups going, and we are ready for our last one, which is a cabbage and lima bean. The lima beans, I told you I did soak those overnight. So those are ready to go. So let me get my prep for that. And I just love cabbage soup because cabbage is, again, these are what I like about all of these recipes. The only thing that I would say that is pricey at all would have been that turkey sausage, because it was no nitrates and no nitrites. But everything else here is very low cost. The kale is a good price. The escarole is a good price. Our beans are low. Carrots, celery, and onions are definitely low cost. Maybe our shiitake mushrooms and our other mushrooms, and again with the sherry. So that's probably our priciest entree of today, our priciest dish today. But this one, cabbage, is still very low. It usually stays very low. Available now all the way through winter. So it's one of those great vegetables. And this one is onions and celery and garlic and cabbage and our beans. And this is going to be beautiful. So let me get started on this. Okay, so what we're going to do is just let me get this clean, and then I'll adjust my camera for you. All right, and again, this is going to start the same way. So let me move things around here. We're going to saute our vegetables in this again. That seems to be our theme for the day. All right, let's get this moved over. We have some days in class where we use the oven a lot, and then we have some days where we use the range a lot. So this is one of those days. Get everything covered and cooking. All right, that's everything is cooking nicely. So I'm just going to add my olive oil here. All right, and we'll get that started. And we're going to, I'll just get this heated for a minute, and then we'll go ahead and add our onions to it and our garlic and our celery. And then you see where we're going, stock, the beans, and the whatever the vegetable is. So let's get that cabbage done. Let's see here. We want to just want to make sure we have to add some lemon juice and lime juice to 2 of our other dishes. So I just don't want to forget to do that. So let me show you how I'm going to do my cabbage here. You know, I always recommend that you work on a flat surface, but I would cut this bottom off. And then let's go like that. And then I'm going to cut this in half. Okay. All right. And sometimes, like right there, we have that big core there. Not on this one. So you could cut it however you like it. You know, I like to get something like that. Don't want them too big, because remember, you're going to be eating this with a spoon. You wouldn't want like coleslaw, you know, big stringy pieces like that. We really need a pound, but I'm thinking that this is probably, I'm going to go probably something like that. Should be a pound. Okay. So we have that already. So we're just give our, how we're going to be very hot in here now. Add our onions. Add our celery. And I'll give that a stir. All right, so let's just let that go for a minute. We're going to add our garlic. I have about probably 3 cloves garlic in here. Add that. And this next step, you could do it either way. I'm going to add this now, just so I get it coated with the olive oil. Let's just, I'm going to take the whole thing over there instead. I'm going to get it all coated with the olive oil because I think that's going to make it really nice. And then we're going to add our stock and our beans. Okay, this is going to be really nice. It's just nice to braise the cabbage a little bit. We don't want it to get brown though. We just want it to get cooked. And it'll cook when it'll cook in the stock for sure. But it's just nice to give it a little head start now with what we're doing. And then we're also going to salt and pepper that. But let's also, we have to add a little bit of lime juice to our black bean soup, and we're going to add a little lemon juice to our other recipe. So let's just get that out of the way. And we'll see how that's coming. And hopefully we have enough time to see if our potatoes are done. So let me check on the potatoes too. And my lime is so tiny and so hard because it's just not the right time for limes. It doesn't want to work on our juicer. So I'm just going to squeeze this into our bean soup. Just to pick up that flavor a little bit. And that's just the way it is sometimes. Sometimes you luck out with a good lemon and a good lime, and sometimes you don't. This doesn't want to give it all. All right. And our cabbage is doing nicely, so let's just get that stirred around. Add my stock to that and my beans. And again, this could be vegetable stock, this could be whatever you have on hand. And I'm gonna add our lima beans, and here's what they look like. They're all soaked. And I could break one with my finger. It's just a little hard. Definitely that hull comes off the outer edge, but you could hear them here too. They still have that sound, so they need to cook for sure. So let's get that in there. And I think I'm going to add some more water to this too. Okay. I will show you what that looks like in 1 minute, and hopefully we could get our, use our immersion blender and take care of our mushrooms real quickly. Water to that one. And then we also have some lemon juice, and that's going to go in at the very end of our soup. So I'm going to put that one in at the end. Let's check in on our mushroom soup and get our bean soup covered. Okay. I'm just gonna give a poke to some of these, to some of our mushroom, see if it's done. And if it is, then we will go ahead and, oh yeah, very nice and soft. So we're going to just pulse that nice and slowly. I'm going to put our cabbage soup back here, and I'm going to turn off all the heat here, and I'm going to move our, I wonder if I could do it here for you. I was gonna pulse over here, but I might be able to work in batches over here. So let's try it. Let's see if we can get this working over here. Just so you could see how it works with the immersion blender. And I just wanted to make a few notes on about immersion blenders, and yeah, we'll reach just fine. Okay, so and let me adjust the camera here. So if you've not used an immersion blender before, really fun and nice to use. You want to go all the way to the bottom and just give it a little pulse. You want to work in batches. I like to just go like that, push down on your vegetables. And you're not going to put it flat on the bottom. You kind of give it a little bit of a tilt. And you can see it's just getting nice and thick before our eyes. And it just smells delicious with that sherry. See how nice and creamy it's getting? We're just gonna keep working it. And I wanted to say one more thing too. I always give you the nutrition information at the bottom. And you know, that's nice to have if you're ever doing anything at home. And I'm going to change this up a little bit since I did add some more water to other things, because that's going to change the that'll definitely change the nutrition content. Just do one more and then we'll start looking at this here. So I do like to use what I do after I make a soup or a stew or anything like that. I like to use, I have an 8-cup measure. So what I will do is I will figure out all the nutrition, and then I'm like, okay, how many servings did I get? So it's good to pour something like that into here. I mean, it's either that or you could ladle out, you know, see how many servings you ladle out. But it's nice sometimes to use a big or larger measure like this, just to see how much you have made. And then I know, okay, another thing that I like to do, if you don't have one of these available to you, you could always use quart containers and say, okay, this recipe made 4 quarts and I'm having a cup. So what does that, how many servings is that? And that just keeps you more accurate with your serving size. And if you are trying to get enough protein, am I getting enough protein? Am I getting enough iron? Things like that, that always makes a difference. So I'm just going to keep on pulsing this. Sorry, it's just, I don't want to be noisy, but it just takes a while to work all of this. And you're just going to keep going until you get that desired creaminess here. And I'm just going to show you what I'm doing here. Now, this can also be done. I do a lot of pureed soups. I'm just going to set this aside. This looks really good. What you could also do is, I'm going to return this to the stove too, because now that my potatoes have broken up, let me make sure it's not too hot. Now that my potatoes have broken up, that starch will make them even a little bit thicker when we return them to the stove. So, but let me show you everything that we made today, even though it's not quite done, and soup takes a while. So I will post all of these later, but you should get, oh, this one looks fantastic. Turn off all the heat here so we don't have an issue. So yeah, all the soups have a little ways to go. This is definitely going to cook down. Oh, but that looks wonderful. Looks nice and hearty. We've got some sausage, we've got beans. So we have pretty much a whole meal. Like I said, this one was the complete one. And two, with the mushrooms, you could always skim some of this foam off, and that is going to go away. And then we have our black bean soup too. Let me show you that. This is going to need some more time too, but they should all come together in about 35-45 minutes, even with soaking the beans overnight. In our last one, nothing is going on yet with our cabbage soup, but it is looking beautiful. So I'll share that with you. Our cabbage and lima bean right there, looking good. Smells wonderful. Garlic and cabbage is such a beautiful combination. But anyhow, so just a little bit of a recap there. Soups are a great way to, have something to have for lunch, have a complete meal for yourself when you get home for dinner. They can be made on the stove. Some of these can be made on the crock pot on low, for several hours, and they'll be nice and ready for you when you walk in the door. The bean soup, the greens and beans ones, I would top this, and I'm going to put this all on the website. Put a picture of it in a bowl with a little bit of fresh grated Parmesan. That sounds so good. My mushroom soup, like I said, I think I'm either leaning towards thyme, maybe even a little bit of chives on the top too. And in addition, we're going to put our sauteed mushrooms on top. So that's going to make a beautiful presentation. My cabbage soup, I'm going to finish that, put a bit of lemon juice. So that's kind of a nice lighter one. And that might be a nice one too. Anything with lemon can have a nice little settling effect on us. And that black bean, perfect if you have a little sinus infection, right? Something to get everything moving up there. And I have a feeling that's going to be very nice and spicy, like the name says. But again, all of these dishes really high in fiber, really keeping that, when you think about high fiber, think about we're feeding that good bacteria in our gut. We're keeping our gut diverse. We're binding cholesterol. We're keeping everything moving in there. And it's just a great addition to our diet to keep us happy and healthy, keep up that immune system. So I hope you give these a try. Remember, we could interchange the escarole and the kale. We could change up the beans, but I think this is a good combination of that cannellini bean in this one, and the black bean and the lima. But the cabbage soup, you could probably do a cannellini bean in that one too. But I think the limas are just going to give it another dimension. And we use cannellini beans and so much, sometimes that lima bean is overlooked. But don't forget, the bag of beans is just a great addition to have in your pantry, to have on hand, and for a really inexpensive, low fat, high protein meal. And iron too. So we talked about the iron content of both of those. And also to have those canned goods on hand, they do last a long time. And look, the cannellini beans and the black beans, but they can be added to salads, soups, stews, a side dish. There's so many uses for these, but soup is so comforting, and it's like a warm hug at the end of the day. So I encourage you to try them. I'll have all the recipes with the nutrition information on them, and also some nice photos to help you follow along. And the other thing that I wanted to mention before class is over is you can, if you don't have an immersion blender, don't feel like you have to go out and buy one, you could also use a blender, but it's just a little dangerous, right? So you have to pour some hot soup. I would probably take some of the hot soup out of here, pour it into my blender, do it in batches. Make sure when you're using your blender that you cover the top where the lid meets the canister, because it can leak out there and burn you. So it's a little bit safer to use our immersion blender. And one thing that I want to say that I didn't get to demonstrate today because it's not quite done cooking is that black bean soup. We're going to take about a quart of it out of there. So about maybe, it's probably going to end up being like probably 50% of it. And we are going to put it in the regular blender and just to puree it up a little bit. I don't think I'm going to use my immersion blender, but I'll let you know what I end up doing. So anyhow, that'll just make it a little bit thick too. So you'll get some starchy beans that have been processed, and you'll get some whole beans in there too. And again, maybe a dollop of Greek yogurt on that, some scallions. Oh, that's going to be wonderful. I hope you enjoy these. I love getting together with you. I'm so glad that you are interested in nutrition, and I hope you stay on the path to wellness. Have a wonderful day.